It was just a few days before the beginning of Passover, and the house was a flurry of activity. Mother and grandmother, with 15-year-old Miriam, were preparing all sorts of food to be served on the first night of this most wonderful holiday. The twins, Leah and Benjamin, were hard at work too, cleaning every corner and surface of their small house. 17-year-old Matthew worked with their father, patching and mending things, and even baby Asa was given some small jobs to do. This morning, a Sunday, Mother asked Leah and Benjamin to do some errands. She needed more wine, more fish, and some of the flat matzah bread the old men had been making for weeks. Happy to leave their cleaning, the twins started out of the house, but Mother stopped them, telling them to hurry back and not dawdle in the streets. Mother looked worried. When Benjamin asked what was wrong, she shook her head and tried to laugh it off. It's just that there were more Roman soldiers in the streets than usual, and she didn't want her children getting into any trouble. Leah and Benjamin rushed through the errands, but they didn't hurry right home as they had been told. They actually took a detour, heading toward the gate of Jerusalem, the great city where they lived. As they worked their way toward the main road, they didn't speak, but kept glancing at each other as if they knew what the other twin was thinking. And they did. They were on a quest to see the Messiah. For days, rumors had been spreading that he was coming to Jerusalem. The twins had never seen Jesus, but they had heard stories of his extraordinary teachings, healings, and miracles. They desperately wanted to see for themselves this wondrous man, God's chosen son. So they made their way toward the center of town, where they saw crowds lining the wide road. They knew Mother would worry, but it didn't look dangerous. People were in a holiday mood, laughing and singing as they waited to see the Son of God. The palm trees rustled in a light breeze and cast crisscross shadows across the warm earth. The twins noticed that people had cut branches and were waving them in the air and fanning themselves. Some spread branches across the dusty road. Leah and Benjamin stood on their tiptoes, trying to see over the crowd. A kindly woman gave them palm branches. A cheerful man cleared the way for them to move to the front. They squinted down the road where they could see dust rising. This must be it, the Messiah's big entrance. They wondered what he would look like and pictured a tall, imposing king wearing a golden crown and draped in rich silken robes. He would be riding a glossy white horse and probably carrying a jewel-encrusted sword. A cloud of dust moved closer, and the kids craned their necks to try to see. Soon they could see a figure riding a horse. No, not a horse. A donkey. They could see a man riding an ordinary scrawny donkey. And the man, well, he was rather ordinary looking, dressed not in silken robes, but rather in a dusty, light-colored traveling cloak. But he might as well have been a king. People were shouting, "Hosanna!" Other people threw their cloaks down on the road for the donkey to walk on. As the procession approached, Leah and Benjamin could finally see the man up close. He looked tired, a bit sad, and very, very kind. He was looking around, making eye contact with as many people as he could. As he passed the twins, he looked at them and smiled. They felt instantly energized, almost as if they had been jolted with a bolt of lightning. His eyes were the wisest, gentlest, most compelling eyes they had ever seen. In that moment, they knew they would follow him anywhere. They could see God in his gaze and feel God's love in his smile. He was nothing that they had expected and everything that they had hoped for. Leah and Benjamin found themselves singing Hosanna and waving their palm leaves wildly in the air. Then he had passed. He was followed by a handful of other men, dustier and scragglier than their leader. Some of these men were smiling and waving at the crowd. Others looked worried, just like Mother had earlier. Mother! The twins looked at each other and quickly slid back through the crowd toward home. The people were still cheering and celebrating, but now the crowd seemed a bit wild. Leah and Benjamin were anxious to get home. They were also afraid that Mother would be angry because they had disobeyed her instructions. But as they approached the house, they saw Mother and Grandfather Abe hurrying home as well. Mother stopped when she saw them. They started to explain and apologize, but she just laughed. She had also gone to see the Messiah, and like them, she had been transformed. They started to tell her what they had seen and how he had looked at them and how he was riding a donkey of all things. They were excited and loud, talking over each other in their excitement. Mother glanced around easily, then quickly quieted them. Her eyes were worried again as she urged the twins and Grandfather into the house, suggesting that they could all tell their stories inside. As they entered the house, the twins looked back toward the street, where they saw some Roman soldiers watching them. That evening, Benjamin, Leah, Mother, and Grandfather shared what they had experienced with the rest of the family. They spoke of feeling blessed and feeling the humble power Jesus exuded. They hoped to see Jesus again and wondered where he was going and what he would do next. They spoke of his teachings and their hopes for his guidance. The adults also spoke of the strange fears they had about the exciting event, including the Roman soldiers, the wild crowd, and a general sense of unease. As they listened to their elders, the kids knew they were living in an extraordinary time, and it centered around the Messiah. They wanted to share in his mission and follow his ways. Each child felt certain that their relationship with Jesus was just beginning. But for tonight, they would shelter in their own home with family, quietly discussing the events of the day.
Last year on Palm Sunday, when we were sheltering at home, I sent you a story about a couple of kids named Leah and Benjamin who snuck out of their house to watch the processional of Jesus entering Jerusalem, being greeted by cheering people waving palms. This year, I'd like to tell you the story of what happened a few days later in Holy Week. It is now Wednesday of Holy Week, the day before Passover. It was early morning in a small house in Jerusalem, and Leah was having a wonderful dream about food, delicious roasted meat, sweet figs, and ouch! She felt a swift kick on her ankle as her twin brother muttered, "Stop laughing at me! It's not funny!" Leah kicked back, and she and Ben sat up at the same time, glaring at each other. "I wasn't laughing at you. What were you dreaming anyway?" asked Leah. Ben shook his head. "I don't know, but you were laughing." Just then they both heard a shriek of laughter from the main room, followed by the belly giggles only a toddler can make. Baby Asa only laughed that way when Father played catch the baby, tossing the little one into the air before softly catching the child. But it was well after dawn, and Father was usually gone by now to his work. The twins weren't quite sure what Father did, but they knew it had something to do with buying and selling goats. Passover was tomorrow, so Father was very busy. Why would he be home? They started down the steps from the sleeping loft, just in time to see Asa's giggling body fly up into the air and strong arms reach out to catch the baby. Father was home, except it wasn't Father. A few more steps down, and the twins saw their sister Miriam sitting at the table, sewing something that looked like a cloak, and their mother smiling broadly at a strange man playing with the baby. "Mother!" the twins gasped, and she looked up and smiled. "Well, hello, sleepyheads. Come down and meet your Uncle James." The twins looked at each other. Uncle James? They didn't even know they had an Uncle James. Direct, as always, Ben said, "Why don't we know you?" James looked a bit uncomfortable, but Mother said firmly, "Don't be rude, Ben. James is my brother. You know I lived somewhere else before I married your father. You have several aunts and uncles you don't know." Leah smiled at James. I'm happy to meet you. But Ben was still looking hard at the man. But I do know you. I've seen you before, Ben said. Leah looked closely now, too. Then she gasped. You were one of the men with him. We saw you with the Messiah. It was true. 3 days before, Ben and Leah had watched the famous teacher Jesus come into Jerusalem. They had seen people cheering and waving palms as Jesus rode a donkey down the road. This man had been one of his companions. A strange expression passed over their uncle's face, but he just said, "Yes, I was with him." "Where is he now? Can we meet him? What is he like?" The twins rattled out questions, speaking over each other in their excitement. Mother cut them off. "He's resting today, and your uncle came to see us. Miriam put your breakfast out, so you go eat it. We have lots to do today." As the twins started to eat, Mother spoke softly to her brother. "You look worried. Are you okay?" James spoke low, but the twins could hear his answer. "I'm okay, but it's been a few strange days. Everyone was so excited to see the Messiah on Sunday, but now it's getting weird. There are so many Roman soldiers around, and everyone seems on edge." Mother glanced at the kids and then said softly, "Maybe he should stay in the temple. Surely the priests will protect him." But James was shaking his head no. "Actually, we went to the temple on Monday, but he caused a bit of an uproar. He wasn't impressed with the moneylenders, and I don't think he's very popular with the priests right now." Mother looked worried. "Are you in danger, James?" "I don't know, Sarah," James answered, "but I wanted to come see you. It might be best to stay close to home for a little while. I've noticed groups of men who seem to want to cause trouble." At that moment, another man appeared in the doorway. Leah and Ben jumped, and even Miriam looked startled. The man looked around the room until his eyes stopped on Uncle James. "There you are. I was told I would find you here," the man said. "We have to go. He's making plans." James handed Asa back to Mother and crossed the room. "Thank you, Judas," he said. "Come in. This is my sister Sarah. Sarah, this is Judas, one of the other disciples of Jesus." As Mother greeted the second man, the twins regarded him critically. He was better dressed than Uncle James, but he had an angry expression on his face. He looked upset and not at all happy to be there. Judas barely spoke to Mother. Then he said again, "We have to go." James gave his sister a hug, then turned to his nieces and nephews. "I'm happy to have met you," he said. "Take good care of your mother." "Will we see you again?" Leah asked. "Can you come to Passover dinner?" "Yes, James, please come," said Sarah. "And you too, Judas. We would like to welcome you to our celebration." James looked pleased, but Judas said, "We can't. He's made plans. He wants us with him. Come on." Judas curtly nodded at Mother and went out the door. James turned back to his sister. "I'd better go. I wish I could come for Passover," he said, "but Jesus has asked the disciples to be with him. I'll come on Friday, if I can. I'm happy to meet you too, kids." Miriam finished a stitch in the cloak she was mending and then got up from the table and handed it to James. James looked at it and smiled. "Thank you, niece," he said. "It was getting a bit tattered. Now I can wear it for a bit longer." He started toward the door, but Mother stopped him. "James, are you sure?" she said. "Are you sure he's the real thing?" James smiled, a tired but very certain smile. "Oh, yes, Sarah," he said, "I'm sure. I don't know what will happen next, but I know Jesus is guiding us toward God. It's up to us to follow. Take good care of yourselves." And then their uncle was gone. Mother stood in the doorway for a few minutes staring out at the dusty yard, and then she turned briskly back to her children. "Okay, gang, Passover is tomorrow, and we have work to do."